This is Coach with episode 9 of Coach's Corner. I wanted to backtrack just a little a month or two ago where I went on a cruise, yet another cruise. This time we went out of San Francisco once again, just like the last cruise that I had an episode about. We actually went on the same ship. We went on the Ruby Princess. So this was the same ship that we took the Alaska cruise on a couple of months before. It's kind of interesting to compare and contrast the two cruises on the same ship because there was some things that were not exactly the same between the cruises, even though the ships were the same. But anyways, we boarded the ship on October 30th. One thing we figured out this time too was the last time we went to Alaska, we went out of San Francisco as well. We flew directly to San Francisco, but it was not a direct flight. We could not find a direct flight on Southwest between Dallas and San Francisco. My sister mentioned that we ought to check out Oakland, and sure enough, we went on Southwest and we found a direct flight from Dallas to Oakland. So the flight was much better. We didn't have that 2 hour layover that we did on the San Francisco flight, and we stayed in a hotel at Oakland. The trip from the port to the airport seemed just about the same distance as it did to the San Francisco airport as it did to the Oakland airport. So, uh, just one thing to always think about whenever you're going on cruises or going some destination. If you have airports that are close to each other, compare and contrast and see if you possibly could escape the dreaded layover or switching planes and all that stuff. But anyways, we boarded the ship on October 30th. Uh, One unique thing about a Hawaii cruise is that you're going to have 5 days, 5 sea days where you don't never get off the ship. Sea days can be rather boring at times, depending on where you're going and stuff and your preferences. For us, it was a great time for us to spend quite a bit of time at the casino, earn a lot of points towards future cruises, and stay in favorable status with the casino folks there in Princess, the Casino Princess folks. So we actually did that. October 30th, first day. We of course it was just a partial day, but I still won $515 in the casino. Casino still had a limited number of advantage games, probably about 13 if I remember right. Actually, casino had not changed any whatsoever from the last time we've been on the ship a couple months before that. I was playing one of the games, I mean, right off, and then around the corner came a lady I saw on the Alaska cruise. She was an advantage player. Her entry level seemed to be a little bit higher than my entry level, so she didn't seem to be that much of a threat. But I mean, she could find stuff that other people didn't have, that other people didn't weren't aware of, and but still, we had not talked on the Alaska cruise. We just kind of, nodded and smiled at each other. She came around the corner and she she started, "Hey, how are you?" Like she's my best friend. So, took my hand out and we started talking. I said, I told her I saw her on the Alaska cruise and started talking to her and come to find out her and her husband are actually what I'd call perpetual cruisers. They had been on the Ruby for about 3 months. Again, just earning points in the casino and getting the free cruises going back to back. We talked a little bit more, and she told me that she was just trying to get the minimum 5,000 points to get free play on the next cruise. She already had a free cruise booked for the next time. So said, she was going to take some plays, but she was going to be a lot more selective on what she took. And ended up, we garnered a friendship. And there were times during the cruise where she would come up to me and say, "Hey, there's a play on this machine that I wasn't aware of." And she goes, "All right, I'm saving this machine for you. Whenever you get done with this play, come on over here and you can play this machine." So became very helpful. And again, going back to my last episode, you garner those relationships with fellow APs, and sometimes you have situations like that worked out very well for you. So she was my main competition, and she was more like a teammate to me as well as anything else. There was another couple that liked to play the long term game, and that was about it. They were mainly table games players, and I actually didn't talk to him till like the next to last day, and kind of find out they cruise a whole lot too. They on the ship a lot too, and he plays really high levels on the table games, and so they get some really fantastic offers. But anyways, that was the main competition. Other than that, it was kind of had my wife and I had the casinos to ourselves. Well, Halloween the next day, I won $679 on the cruise ship. November 1st, I won $440. November 2nd, I won $501. And November 3rd, I won $712. So on November 4th, we arrived at Hawaii. I believe our first destination was Maui. Oh, no, I'll take that back. I'm sorry. Our first destination was Honolulu. Uh, we had planned on going to a luau, and was in my room, and we got 2 tickets to the luau. And they're pretty expensive. I mean, I think it was like $550 for the couple. And our friends Kevin and Debbie had gone with us. Kim had gotten a free room, and I got in a free room. And it was the same couple that had gone to Alaska with us. And I'm sorry, gone to Alaska with us the year before last. My sister and her husband went to us on the Alaska cruise. But anyways, he went to his room to get the luau tickets, and they were sold out. So I guess I've gotten the last 2 luau tickets. We had gone on we've gone on a Hawaiian cruise twice. We went 2 years ago in October in 2023. Kim was actually given a luau from the casino, and so it was the same luau that we had booked. And so what we ended up doing was giving Kevin and Debbie our tickets, and we just we rented a car and did some other things in Honolulu, drove around and saw a lot of sights and stuff. But anyways, so they paid us back later for the luau and stuff. But so we didn't do that on that trip. I think the next day we went to Maui, but I don't recall. We went to 4 different stops in Hawaii, and here's one of the first things I've ever experienced. Uh, when we arrived at Hawaii on November 4th, 5th, and 6th, all 3 of those nights that we were in the Hawaii area, they closed the casino down and never opened it up in the evening. Uh, I guess they made the ruling that we were never entering international waters during that time, so they never opened up the casino. When we took our Hawaii cruise 2 years prior, that was on Carnival, and they opened up the casino every night that we were in Hawaii. So I guess that was assumption. Maybe federal laws have changed or international laws have changed or something. That could be another reason why. So we had 3 days where we didn't play any in the casino, obviously because it was closed. On November 7th, the casino opened back up as we was leaving our last port from Hawaii. I won $441 that day. And then November 8th, the next day, which is, again, these become 5 sea days cruising back towards the United States, uh, San Francisco area. Well, actually, where he's going to Mexico. Uh, November 8th, I won $498. November 9th was my best day where I won $1,013. November 10th, I actually lost $402. And I recall that day. There was a long-term game that I played 3 or 4 times on the last cruise. Uh, this game was in a playable position, and I got on it and played for 3 hours and never moved what I wanted to move. And so I finally just gave up after it. And I was only playing at 80 cents, and I finally gave up. I think I lost $600 or so on the game. Uh, November 11th, the next day, I won $281. November 12th, I won only $36. I played a minimal amount in the casino that day. And November 13th was the next to last day on the cruise. And I was about 1,500 points, maybe 2,000 points away from the goal that I wanted to reach to get a balcony room with $500 free play. Excuse me. And I misread the rules. You need to earn your points by the day before the last day of the cruise, not the last day of the cruise. We still had one more full day of the cruise, but you had to earn your points by midnight that night. So I was crunched for points, and I had to do the balance of, you know, do I play non-advantage games to get the points to get to my goal, or what do I do? Well, the couple that I mentioned earlier that like to play the long-term game, he was sitting by a long-term game, and he had a portable wheelchair, and he was sitting by the game, and we had talked. We finally started talking to each other some by then, and I told him my scenario. I said I kind of screwed up, and I got to get points tonight, so I've got to figure out where to get them at. And he was sitting by the long term game that him and his wife like to play. And I said, I guess I might as well not check this one, should I? And he goes, no, you need to check it. And sure enough, it was in a playable position. And I said, well, aren't you going to play this? He goes, no, because I found it. And I said, I was going to save it for you because I know you needed points. So again, just building those relationships with fellow advantage players. I got in the game, and again, the game just, I played for 3 hours, playing as fast as I could. This is at 80 cents. And again, it just didn't do a thing. I got to crunch time. I had about an hour left until midnight, and I can't remember how many more points I needed. But I went and did something I normally would never do. I went and played 10 play quarter video poker, and I actually won about $120 playing that, and finally got my points. Uh, Speaking of points, I mentioned what it costs, how many points it is to get certain levels of cruises on my last podcast about Alaska. Those thresholds have moved upward a little bit. Princess said increase those, and those thresholds actually move up and down depending on the length of your cruise. Uh, these thresholds obviously were quite a bit higher than the Alaska cruise, but they had moved up because there was a couple extra days in this cruise, and then they also had moved up because they changed their base level from, I'm just, for example, from 10,000 to 12,500 for the same offer. Uh, they did mention the cruise was longer, but you actually had 3 down days, so they should have factored that into the formula, so you didn't have the full 16 days as far as casino play goes. Uh, I finished the last day with the bang. I told myself last day I've already got my goal. I'm just going to play real selective, and it paid off. Ended up winning $951 the last day. So it was a very successful cruise from a gaming standpoint. Uh, it was actually my most successful cruise ever. Uh, I ended up $5,299 ahead once we got off the ship for the cruise. Um, actually, ironically, my second best cruise results ever was the October 14th through 28th cruise on Carnival to Hawaii. Uh, Won $5,081 on that cruise. So my two most successful cruises have been on the way to Hawaii. I guess maybe just all that time in the casino during those sea days helps. Uh, we did go to Ensenada the next to last day of the cruise in Mexico. And the reason you go to Ensenada is if you didn't go there, this would not be an international cruise and you couldn't open the casino. So anytime you go to Hawaii, you're actually going to take a side trip at the end to Mexico, or possibly if you leave from maybe the Seattle area, maybe Canada area, and to make it actually an international cruise, so the casinos can be open. So that's just an interesting fact. Ensenada, we didn't even get off the ship. Kim and I did. We've been there before. Uh, Kevin and Debbie got off the ship and stuff, but we never did even get off. Um, a couple of things that I found kind of interesting about this cruise. This again was the exact same ship that we went on the Alaska cruise, but it seemed like the buffet was much weaker on this cruise. There wasn't as many selections. The food didn't seem to be as good, and even the dining experiences in the restaurant weren't near as enjoyable as it was in the Alaska cruise. It seems odd. It's the same ship, probably most of the same personnel, but there's a completely night and day difference. Another first for us. I've been on 26 cruises now. And this is the first time I've ever been on a cruise where there wasn't a single comedian on the cruise. In fact, I consider the entertainment package on this ship probably the worst I've ever seen. The production shows were few and far between, and the ones that they had were just kind of rather weak performances. Uh, that they had the trivia and stuff. And unfortunately, Luca, who was on the Alaska cruise, was off now. He was on vacation or had his lead time of, where he could, I think that a lot of times employees are like 6 months on, a couple months off. So he was back home. The girl from Brazil that took his place was just as annoying as could be on the trivia. I mean, it was just hardly, yeah, you hardly bear to go to the trivia because she was just had an annoying voice and she was just an annoying person. But anyways, but in general, I was really surprised that there was not a single comedian on the cruise. And again, for a cruise that's where you're locked in on the ship for 10 days out of the cruise, you should have a great entertainment package. And I mean, this was by far the worst I've ever seen. So uh, if you want entertainment, Princess may be a little bit disappointing at times. If you don't want, if you want a cruise where you want to get away from the kids and just mainly have other adults there, Princess is probably your cruise line to do because they don't cater too much towards the kids. But even though they're under the Princess umbrella, I mean under the Carnival umbrella, it's a night and day difference as far as their approaches to kids. The Carnival's more kid oriented. A lot of stuff for kids to do. You see kids running around, teenagers, packs of teenagers running around everywhere. Uh, you don't really see it on Princess, and so that is a completely different thing. And again, as far as the ship being the same ship, the food and entertainment was not a day difference. And the entertainment going to Alaska was decent. Now they had a couple of production. I do say the production shows going to Alaska weren't very good either, but seemed like they had just as many production shows in as they did over this much longer cruise. So those standpoints were a little bit disappointing as far as the entertainment goes. Uh, Other than that, we enjoyed it. We had a balcony room. It was a lot of fun, and and of course it's a lot of fun if you win a lot of money. We The Alaska cruise we qualified for a balcony room. Both Kim and I both qualified for a balcony room with $1,500 free play. We're going to take advantage of that offer in January when we're going to cruise out of Fort Lauderdale for a Caribbean cruise. Uh, on this cruise, we also earned a balcony room, but we only earned $500 free play. We actually, I think, had to earn 5,000 more points than we did on Alaska cruise just to get to this level. So you can compare and contrast the differences as far as how many points you had to earn to to get a cruise at that same level. I think to get the cruise the same level that we did at Alaska, we'd have to earn 20,000 more points. And to me, it was not worth the exposure to negative games to get to that point level. Uh, Most of the time when I exposed myself to something negative, it was actually I just went to play video poker, and I was down probably about $900 playing video poker on the trip. So there's the exposure to negative expectation games where it's and probably the best video poker is probably 96% or so on the cruise ship. So there's you're not looking at the best pay tables in the world. But anyways, so again, you strike that balance of how many points you want to get for offers. You want to, if you want to cruise quite often, you want to try to strike an offer where you get enough points to get the offers to continue coming in. We're getting some very nice offers from Princess after only 3 cruises with the company, and so we'll probably continue to try to achieve those goals of trying to get enough points for at least certain entry points as far as future cruises. Uh, and another thing about Princess too is you earn the points, you get a certificate, and you got to use it within a time range. But that's not the end of the world if you don't use that cruise certificate because you get so many offers in the mail and on emails too. You get so many offers that are just as good as the one that you earned. So don't feel obligated that you've got to go within that time span if you earn a certificate on a Princess cruise ship. Um, we flew back into Dallas, and usually we spend the night at the Choctaw Casino in Durant. But we opted to drive back the whole way. It's for to get back to home. It's about a 6 hour, 6.5 hour trip. So, oh well, I'm sorry. About 6.5, 7 hour trip, depending on traffic and stuff. So we just opted to do that. So overall, it's a very successful cruise. I do recommend Hawaii if you've never been to Hawaii. If you do not like being confined, here's a little bit of psychological difference too in this. If you do not like being confined on a ship for 5 straight days, knowing that you're just out in the middle of the ocean, in the middle of nowhere, that this may not be the cruise for you. Because to me, the difference between this cruise and any other cruise is that you are in the middle of the ocean. Uh, if you have issues, you may be miles away from any other ships, miles away from any other places. If you cruise the Caribbean, if you cruise up Alaska, you're always not too far from the shoreline at any point, most cases. So, and oftentimes, if you do a Caribbean cruise, you may have a ship that's parallel with you, not too many miles away from you as well, from another country. You may be cruising on Carnival, but Royal Caribbean may be just a few miles away from you, because once you get to the port, there's two, three, four other ships from different cruise lines. So at all points that you're pretty close to some kind of shoreline. If there's issues, help us along the way. So there's a little bit of psychological difference in going on a cruise to Hawaii or something like that. But Hawaii's always been on my wife's bucket list, and so she's got to go twice now. So she's really liked that fact. And again, this was a free cruise. By the way, I think my wife ended up with $600 free play on this cruise with her balcony room, and I ended up with $400 free play. I played my free play actually on the last day, so that added to the nice end to the cruise, and I decided I would save it to the last day. And of course, I played it all on video poker because it's the least volatile game in the casino. So, anyways, we're again, like I mentioned, we are getting ready to do a cruise. Well, I think we leave January 8th for our next cruise. We'll be going out of Fort Lauderdale. It's going to the Caribbean, Bahamas, and I'll do a episode on that as well. Again, that'll be Princess, and my wife and I each will be getting $1,500 free play along with our balcony room on this cruise. I do want to give a shout out to NWA in WUSA. We had a fun trip in Oklahoma. He was experimenting with a game, which of course I can't mention, and we did a little bit of that. He actually found that the game at a couple other spots, but anyways, we did a real late night, which is too late for me, but we still managed the next day, and it was short. It was a short trip, but it was a fun trip. It's always fun to enjoy trips like that. I kind of have plans next couple of days to do an end of the year podcast, just kind of let y'all know how my year went and everything. So you can look forward to that probably a week or so, or maybe dread hearing it in a week or so, depending on what your thought process is. It's kind of neat. I've met 3 people now that we met 2 on our trip that know about this podcast, and it's kind of neat meeting people that actually listen to the podcast and stuff, and again, it's shout out to those guys. They were really all 3 were fantastic, really nice guys, everything. So, but well, I guess I can ramble on, but I better stop here. I hope everybody goes out and hits a lot of jackpots, and don't do what I did. Yesterday or day before yesterday, I hit a jackpot for $1,280, and I could have hit that a week later, and that would not have had a W2G. So go out and hit a lot of jackpots, especially after January 1st. So until next time, this is Coach with Coach's Corner.